The next thing we have to go over are assemblies. An Onshape Assembly tab is where you define the hierarchical structure of part and the subassembly instances of an assembly. It is also where you can define degrees of freedoms and relations. Of course, you can have more than one assembly tab, and there's different ways that you can manipulate them to your advantage. But for this case, we'll just start with the basics. And so once you have your own assembly tab, you can insert parts by going up to here, and you can insert both parts and assemblies from the current document you're in and from other previous documents that you may have. And then once you have them imported, everything is still everything has degrees of freedom when it starts off with. So you can move this around however which way that you want, and there's nothing constraining it. And so in order to constrain that, we use relations or mates, which are defined up here. There's a bunch of different types of ones, but we'll only go over a couple of basic ones. And then one thing that you want to always do is that although you can fix stuff, you can just fix it to where, okay, now this is fixed, I'll never be able to move. It is a smarter practice to constrain it to the origin instead. And so let's go. The first mate is the fasten mate. And so what this basically allows is that you click on the first instance that you want it to be connected to, and then click the origin or whatever you're trying to fasten it to, and then those objects will become forever fastened together, and you can't move this in any way or shape. And you see the degrees of freedom has now been removed because there's no way for this to be moved at all. And you'll also see over here that you'll have this little icon over here that shows that it is constrained to the origin itself. And then the next one after fastened would be the revolute. And basically this is very similar to the fasten, except for that it allows rotation around a certain axis depending on how and you click in which order you click it to. And then afterwards there's also the slider mate. And this one is kind of like the fasten mate, except it allows direction along this axis right here, so you can move it back and forth, but you can't move it in any other direction, and you can't rotate it. And then after that, we have a combination of the slider and the revolute, which is the cylindrical mate. And as you might have guessed, this allows it to rotate and also move along that axis that you've already established. And then you also have some other mates as well. The planar mate basically allows this face to be connected to another face. And so it can slide and move however which way that it wants, but it will always be connected to that face, or at least it will be in line with that face. And then a couple of other ones that you'll typically want to use is the parallel mate, which just basically makes two instances always parallel. And then also the tangent mate, which allows for one object to be tangent to another. And then you've also got some other ones like group. Group can be useful. It basically just ensures that they're all relative to each other. So if you have like 6 parts and they're all in the right position, you can just group them together, and then they won't be able to move in any way or form. Usually just try to use fastened mates for that. But group can be useful for making sure that everything stays in the correct orientation. And then similarly to sketches, there's a couple ways of mirroring, or quote unquote mirroring your parts. You can use linear patterns, which basically just allows you to create more instances of what you already have, depending on how many you want, and the distance that you want them to be from. And then there's also the circular pattern, which is similar, except it's just in a circle. And then some other very neat features that we have are gear relations. So if you want to set up your gear relations and show how the gears will turn, you can use these ones up here, and you can even put in the relation ratio. So this is where you would put in your gear ratio, and you just have to make sure that those mates are either cylindrical or revolute. That way they can actually turn.